right, good morning, friends. Welcome to another day at Empty Cloud Monastery during our winter retreat, and to our third day exploring mind and emotions. So, welcome to Elaine and Chitapala and Geeta and Michael. Good to see you all, friends. And hello to Kauser friend and Denise. We got some beautiful roses a few weeks ago from Denise on Madana Sahado. It was such a lovely thing to find while we were meditating. And Kyle is also with us. Good to see you. Hello, Sarah. Hi, Diana. Welcome to everyone who's saying hello or also just watching in the background. So I posted a little link to a sutta that we're going to be checking out this morning. So it's Sangutra Nikaya 9.3 with Meghiya. And before we start anything, hello to Edward. Good to see you as well. Before we go any further, we can start by paying homage to our original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, the reason why we're all here practicing. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham dhammam sangham namassami. So, yesterday morning we had a bit of an overview of suffering, the different types of suffering, the causes that intuitively our wrong view goes and searches as causes of suffering. And then last night we actually went a little bit more in depth with what the cause of suffering really is, which is desire and how it manifests and how the Buddha talks about how it manifests. So this morning, the reason why I picked this particular sutta to study with you all is because it's so human and so relatable. So we find Maggia, who at that time was attending on the Buddha and is an ordained monk. And he sees this beautiful mango grove and asks the Buddha over and over again to go and dwell peacefully. And at the very beginning, the Buddha is like, "Oh, wait for some other monks to come. You're in no rush." But he's really insistent. He's like, "No, I want to go." And actually, very much reminds me of my mind state. Before going to Thailand, I was really excited. I was like, yes, I'm going to go and meet all the enlightened beings, and I'm going to meditate in all these wonderful places and go on alms round like the real forest monks do. So I was so full of excitement. Actually, Bhante Skasa was like, "Yeah, just relax." And instead of actually going through all the sutta, maybe we can start at the middle part of it. So it's basically when Maggia finally convinces the Buddha to go to the mango grove. And so it starts, you're going to have the translation from Bhante Sujato, but I'm going to be reading from Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi's translation. So I'll give you also some context to see the different flavors of how each monastic chooses to translate the words of the Buddha. So anyway, around half of the mid part of the sutta, Then the Venerable Maggia rose from his seat, paid homage to the Blessed One, circumambulated him, keeping the right side toward him, and went to the mango grove. He entered and sat down at the foot of a tree to pass the day. Then, while the Venerable Maggia was dwelling in that mango grove, three kinds of bad, unwholesome thoughts frequently occurred to him: sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of harming. Sounds familiar? We're all the residents here are laughing because we think that our experience is so unique. Each one of us just goes through all these trials and tribulations, and then especially when we're on, say, a meditation retreat, everybody around us looks so peaceful and blissed out. So we're like, oh, they're all in fourth jhana. Am I the only one here miserable with all this greed, hatred, and illusion? I can't stop thinking about lunch. I can't stop thinking about planning. I can't stop thinking about snuggling the cat. I can't stop thinking about whatever it is. I can't stop hating my neighbors, whatever breathing problem. I can't stop hating the noise of the heater. I can't stop hating whatever it is that we're hating at that moment. And then we're also confused. So we're like, I'm also so confused, and I've been meditating for so long, and I'm here. If you're a monastic, you're like, I'm a monastic, I should be better than this. If you're a lay person, you're like, well, I've been practicing, making merit. What is wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. Or better, everything's wrong with all of us until we attain awakening. Or actually, even better, as Suzuki Roshi used to say, you're perfect just the way you are, and you need a little work. So we're all perfect the way we are, and we need a lot of work. I will add a lot because it sounds like a lot. But the reason why I really love this sutta, once again, it's because we tend to have, most of the time, obviously, in the suttas, it's very accomplished practitioners that are captured in their moments of awakening. And it's a little less often that we see people struggling on their path of awakening. And I love the struggles through the path of awakening, especially the ones of the Buddha, because then they give me hope that actually this path is possible. And there's not really any difference in each one of us. It just manifests slightly different, but we're all here trembling together. Anukampa. That's why I can have a lot of compassion for each one of us whenever we start noticing and realizing how these difficulties are a shared experience. And so Maggia, Venerable Maggia, 2,500 years ago, was no different than us. So he goes there all very hopeful, reminded me actually, he goes to the mango grove, and actually reminded me of when I went in Thailand to this monastery, but it was on this beautiful lake with these incredible sunsets and dawns. So then I'm like, oh, after morning puja, before breakfast, there's like a good hour and a half. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go and meditate, waiting for the dawn in this beautiful lake. Oh, yes, this is going to be great. I'm going to get enlightened there, just like the Buddha. There was a Bodhi tree, so I'm going to be underneath the Bodhi tree. I sit underneath the Bodhi tree, and I start getting devoured by mosquitoes. That, as Ajahn Brahm says, of course, when you're a foreigner in any country, the rumor spreads really quickly amongst the mosquitoes, like the new restaurant in town. So I had the new restaurant in town experience. So at the very beginning, I was trying to practice, self-restraint and endurance, and then at a certain point, I was literally covered by mosquitoes, each one of them biting a piece of me, and I couldn't take it any longer. And my mind was full of greed, hatred, and illusion. And it then occurred to him, to Venerable Megya, this is truly astounding and amazing. I have gone forth out of faith from the household life into homelessness, yet I'm still stalked by these three kinds of bad, unwholesome thoughts: sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of harming. It's exactly what arose, same exact thought process appeared in my mind. Like, I'm in robes. How is it possible? When I was reading the biographies of the other practitioners, they were having moments of awakening and they were just enduring the mosquitoes. So then the Venerable Maggia approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side, and said, Here, Bhante, while I was dwelling in that mango grove, three kinds of bad, unwholesome thoughts frequently occurred to me: sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of harming. Then occurred to me, this is truly astounding and amazing. I have gone forth out of faith from the household life into homelessness, yet I'm still stalked by these three kinds of bad, unwholesome thoughts: sensual thoughts, thoughts of ill will, and thoughts of harming. And the Buddha replies, Magya, when liberation of mind has not matured, five things lead to its maturation. So I love how the Buddha, out of compassion, just gives him straight away some practical advice. And he's also matter of factly about it. As we were saying yesterday, there should never be any shame whenever we are experiencing what we're experiencing. We should first be equanimous towards ourselves and understand that this is just a human experience and that we are embarking in a really hard quest to eradicate greed, hatred, and illusion, which we have cultivated not only in this lifetime, which is not, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 70 years, 80 years, however old we are, 10 years, 5 years. When you see young babies, I have some young nephews, and I remember I was quite impressed. I'm the youngest one of my family. I used to be, not anymore. But so I was always the baby in the family, so I was never really exposed to little children until somewhat recently, until like 5 years ago, when my brother started making babies. And what really captured my attention, because I was a Buddhist practitioner already, was how, even though they were newborns and didn't have any way to communicate verbally, they were already expressing all the range of emotions that adults express. And nobody, my brother, nor his mother, nor his wife, no one had to teach these children how to be angry, how to be greedy, or how to be deluded. They already knew how to do that. And, before Buddhism, perhaps we are very confused about it. Once again, we create more delusion. We're like, oh, this is kind of really random. This person has more inclinations towards greed. This person has more inclination towards hatred. This person has more inclination towards confusion. This person seems to have a mix of all of them equal, whatever it is. But what I find one of the biggest reliefs of the Dhamma is actually that it gives an explanation to all of this. And it's not random, it's not chaotic, but rather it's because for countless time, without discoverable beginning, we've been cultivating greed, hatred, and delusion. We've been going around in the world not guided by the Dhamma. And so sometimes we get things right, and sometimes we cultivate the wholesome, and sometimes we don't get things right, and we cultivate the unwholesome. As we were exploring with the sutta yesterday morning, when we think those are the causes of suffering, when it's other people, or when we think it's us, or when we think it's a combination of us, of the two of us, or when we think it's random things happening in the world, then of course we're going to try to fix the problem because nobody wants to suffer. But we're going to waste a lot of time because we're not really going to the source, and we're going to make a lot of bad karma in between. So perhaps instead of being oppressed, then we become the oppressor. And then if we're not the oppressor, we become the oppressed. And there's this endless cycle of rebirth. So that's why, in a way, we can say that greed, hatred, and delusion is natural, but that doesn't mean that we want to actually be in this state. As Svante Sudazo likes to say, hemlock is natural. This used to be my objection when I first got into Buddhism. I used to had all my like sort of preconceived ideas, and one of my biggest objections most of the time was, well, this is a natural state of being. And I remember him saying, yeah, hemlock is natural too, but that doesn't mean you want to drink it and kill yourself. Like, you don't want to take poison. Like, oh, it's a good point. So that's why the Buddhist path is going against the stream. It is in a sort of, if we want to use natural, it's actually kind of an unnatural path in the way that is going against our natural inclinations. But it's beautiful because it releases us from suffering, because our natural inclinations lead us to suffering. So anyway, getting back to the Buddha's advice, he speaks about 5 things that lead to the maturation of the liberation of mind. So we need to get, as we were also talking a lot about yesterday, we need to do some preliminary work. We can't expect that after countless lifetimes of nurturing greed, hatred, and delusion, that we can just sit on a cushion, go on a meditation retreat, and boom, attain awakening. It doesn't really work that way. I wish it did. I mean, it can work for some people if they have already done this work in the past. So perhaps in previous lifetimes. And the Buddha says here, Magya, a bhikkhu has good friends, good companions, good comrades. When liberation of mind has not matured, this is the first thing that leads to its maturation. So this is, once again, what the Buddha recommends in terms of kalyanamitas. When he tells Ananda, or better, Ananda goes to the Buddha and says, yes, really understood that spiritual friends is half of the path. The Buddha corrects him and says, no, kalyanamitas is the entire path. And that's because we want to be surrounded, once again, by people who have the same goal, where we are all supportive of one another. And ideally, actually, the people that we surround ourselves with are ahead of us in the path. So they can inspire us in bettering ourselves. So we don't want to be the best in the room. We want to be the worst in the room, because that will inspire us to attain awakening. And it's also true, actually, in worldly things. That was the reason why I loved living in New York City, for completely opposite reasons than the wholesome reasons of the Dhamma. But I love being surrounded by people who were much better than I was in pretty much anything. You can never be the best of the best in New York City. There's always going to be someone who's better than you, no matter how hard you try. Want to be the best writer, it's going to be someone better than you. Want to be the best architect, it's going to be someone better than you, no matter how hard you work. And it's great, because that keeps you from just settling in sort of mediocrity. It pushes you to do better. Worldly things, actually, it leads to a lot of greed, hatred, and delusion, because then if you want to be the best architect, then you're probably going to start doing lots of different unwholesome things in order to pursue superiority. But when it comes to spiritual path, it's spiritual practice, then it's extremely wholesome. Yes, you're like, yes, may I develop the wisdom of Venerable Bhikkhu body? Yes, I'm going to work really hard. Sadhu. Great. That's wonderful. So we want to do that. We want to build that. And the second thing that the Buddha mentions is a bhikkhu is virtuous. He dwells restrained by the patimokkha, possessed of good conduct and resort, seeing danger in minute faults. Having undertaken the training rules, he trains in them. When liberation of mind has not matured, this is the second thing that leads to its maturation. So if you're not an ordained monastic, then you can think of this in terms of the precepts. So the 5 precepts that are the basic sort of training rules within Buddhism. So of course there are certain, or the 8 precepts actually, that the majority of people that are into Buddhism at least practice during the Upasana. An incredible opportunity to practice like an arahat. As the Buddha recommends us to reflect, an enlightened being. That is the type of virtue that an enlightened being has naturally. So in the same way, during the Upasana, we, as lay people, we can think about that. We can project that. We can go like, wow, there is this capacity inside of me, this capacity of awakening, this capacity of purity. So all these training rules are not an end in and of itself, but are a means to an end. And that is very important. So whether it's 5 precepts, 8 precepts, 10 precepts, or more precepts if you're a monastic, 311 if you're a bhikkhuni, and a little less if you're a bhikkhu. Whatever it is, the number that one is working with, it has to be taken as an opportunity to develop virtue, not as some kind of arbitrary restriction, but as something that creates the conditions for us to look at our mind. And also what he's actually highlighting here, seeing danger in minute faults, is a practice of mindfulness. And that is another incredible blessing. That practicing, taking precepts, I love taking precepts, which is why I started racking them up throughout the years of my Buddhist practice. At the very beginning, I was very opposed to them, actually, because I was, I was seeing all of it as a religious rite. And my background was agnostic / leaning towards atheist. So I wasn't particularly interested in, I liked the Dhamma. I was interested in the philosophy of it, but I wasn't particularly interested in converting to any religious system. But then it came to one point of my practice where I decided to give it a shot. And it made such a huge transformation in my mind. Starting from the first one, not killing sentient beings. Incredible. We had this ant infestation at the Rockaway Summer House. All those ants have been my teachers. They taught me so many things. And it was great because the ant infestation was there for like the whole 3 years that we were there. So by the end of it, at the very beginning, I was cultivating resentment. Then it switched to tolerating the ants while going, oh, this precept of not killing is so stupid. I really don't understand why we can't just kill all these beings that are ruining my life. And then after a while, I started caring about these sentient beings and paying a lot of attention for them not to be hurt. And I remember still the moment when I saw an ant in the sink and I lifted her up because the water would have otherwise drowned her. And I remember noticing this mind of compassion and going, wow, the ant just taught me compassion, like a natural instinct of compassion. There is no trace of that irritation or hatred that there was back in the day. And I would have never reached that sort of point had it not been because I trained myself in it by taking the rules, the training rule. So now for me, it's impossible and incapable of my mind to think of killing an insect. Whenever I leave the monastery and I see people during the summer normally killing mosquitoes, for example, which I used to do all the time, I actually thought it was ridiculous not to. And I'm horrified. But I still have that memory of my mind when it was not horrified, that was thinking about it in the exact opposite way. So there's no conceit of superiority towards people who are killing insects. There's actually the understanding of the delusion, of the confusion in the mind that then leads to unwholesome actions. And that I too was in exactly that state of being. And had it not been for training the mind in the way that the Buddha compassionately has given us the tools to train our minds with, I would have never reached this point of not generating unwholesome thoughts towards insects. And by the way, this creates then the conditions for us to have no regret, to produce beautiful, wholesome states of mind that then can lead to great opportunities to recollect our own virtue. I've been doing a lot of that for the whole month of January, when meditation was very difficult and and my mind seemed like a mess. And I would sit down, stop, and just recollect my own virtue. All the good things that I've done in the past, all the good things that I've done in the day. And I was like, oh, actually, we're really not that bad. This is doing pretty all right. And the mind becomes delighted. It doesn't come from arrogance. It's actually a practice that the Buddha recommends for us to do all the time, recollecting our own virtue. It's meant to delight the mind and to give us also the sense of how important it is to develop, to cultivate virtue. And a happy mind then gets easily concentrated. So then it's not more in breath, out breath. Oh, I forgot. Oh, wait, what was I doing? Oh, in breath out. Oh, this is so brutal. But rather it's like, it's quite delightful and peaceful. So it's all interconnected. All of these things are not separate in and of itself, but each one is the proximate cause of the other, as the Buddha says. So there is no concentration that is possible without virtue being its proximate cause. And then the Buddha says, a bhikkhu gets to hear at will, without trouble or difficulty, talk concerned with the austere life that is conducive to opening up the heart. That is, talk on fewness of desires, on contentment, on solitude, on not getting bound up with others, on arousing energy, on virtuous behavior, on concentration, on wisdom, on liberation, on the knowledge and vision of liberation. So fundamentally on everything that concerns the Dhamma. Here at Empty Cloud, we're very privileged in that sense. So we're constantly, well, these days not that that much, but because of the pandemic. But for the past 5 years, aside of course from having Bhante Sutazo, a resident monk here, who is very well versed in the suttas and in the Dhamma in general, but we've had the pleasure and privilege to have so many senior monks coming from all different traditions, all speaking about the core tenets of the Dhamma. But right now, this is actually one of the unexpected blessings of the pandemic, is that there is so much Dhamma present online. So many talks, so many different monastics sharing the teachings of the Buddha. So there is no excuse anymore. You have also Bhante Gunaratana from Bhavana Society that does live streams. How incredible is that? It was not possible until 2020. It's incredible. Had to travel all the way to West Virginia in the middle of nowhere. Had to have a car to go there. Very complicated. Now it's as easy as a click. So take advantage of that opportunity. Now the Buddha says again, a bhikkhu has aroused energy for abandoning unwholesome qualities and acquiring wholesome qualities. He is strong, firm in exertion, not casting off the duty of cultivating wholesome qualities. When liberation of mind has not matured, this is the fourth thing that leads to its maturation. So fundamentally this is also connected to what we were saying earlier, not just sitting there and waiting for things to happen, but really committing ourselves to the path and really putting effort in uprooting the unwholesome and cultivating the wholesome. So not being okay with our sort of level of generosity and virtue, for example, of going, well, okay, I'm a right person. I don't really kill. I don't do this and that. I'm all right with lying. I mean, sometimes maybe a white lie here and there, but nothing that is too harmful. No. Lift it up. Raise the bar higher and put effort into it. Mediocrity is not praised in the Noble One's discipline. We always want to better ourselves. In order to do that, we have to arouse energy. See, the training in Manhattan, in New York City, was really good. So that we can apply, there is skill sets that can be transferred to the practice of Dhamma. And then the fifth factor, he says, again, a bhikkhu is wise. He possesses the wisdom that discerns arising and passing away, which is noble and penetrative and leads to the complete destruction of suffering. When liberation of mind has not matured, this is the fifth thing that leads to its maturation. So once again, noticing how everything is impermanent. That is one of the core practices that actually the Buddha and the Sutta will go to at the end of it, if I remember correctly. But here he says that there is some sort of preliminary practice also to cultivating the perception of impermanence, which is to cultivate the wisdom, cultivate that sense of observing arising and passing away to begin with. And we can do it not only when we're sitting on the cushion. It doesn't have to be the sort of imperceptible or more subtle, rather than imperceptible, more subtle forms of impermanence, but in everything around us, in every single moment. A while back, I saw this project that this photographer had done that since the 80s, she would take pictures of herself in her house wearing similar clothes and basically documenting her impermanence, her constant shifts. And it's actually a very beautiful project. very inspiring, very useful. But in that way, even though she's not Buddhist, she's not probably even um, aware of the Dhamma, of the teachings of the Buddha. She's actually, that is a way, for example, to cultivate this quality of mind, this quality of wisdom, that then creates the conditions for us to have an easier time practicing the perception of impermanence. So then the Buddha says, when Megya, a bhikkhu has good friends, good companions, good comrades, it can be expected of him that he will be virtuous. And a bhikkhu has good friends, good companions, good comrades, it can be expected of him that he will get to hear at will, without trouble or difficulty, talk concerned with the austere life. When a bhikkhu has good friends, good companions, good comrades, it can be expected of him that he will arouse energy for abandoning unwholesome qualities. When a bhikkhu has good friends, good companions, good comrades, it can be expected of him that he will be wise, possessing the wisdom that discerns arising and passing away, which is noble and penetrative and leads to the complete destruction of suffering. So this is also beautiful because the Buddha, even though he had broken it down into 5, then fundamentally goes back into 1 and saying and highlighting how spiritual friends is the entire path. And so once you really do that kind of casting, you select the people that are around you for most of the time, then you're kind of already well set. So inevitably, inevitably being in that environment will lead to cultivating what needs to be cultivated. And he says, having based himself on these 5 things, the bhikkhu should develop further another 4 things. So he says, once this preliminary sort of practice is done, then we can develop something further. And he says, the perception of unattractiveness should be developed to abandon lust. And we spoke at length about that yesterday when we were covering lust, and how normally we tend to look, we're very much obsessed with the gratification of anything that we like, but we hardly ever pay attention to the drawbacks of our experience. So the perception of unattractiveness of food is something that we were talking about there, but it's unattractiveness of pretty much anything, of the body, your body, other people's bodies. Unattractiveness of buildings, nice buildings. This monastery, when I first saw it, I remember thinking, oh, it's such a pretty building. Now I'm doing a lot of unattractiveness of this building, inevitably, because there are leaks, there's constant things to be fixed. So much dukkha, a lot of unattractiveness. But, in the West, we have no escape from that due to our climate. Well, there are very few places, I guess probably Florida doesn't have bad climate like winter or snow and, the whole 4 seasons that we have here. Or Texas, I don't know, I'm not sure. California has its other problems. But, aside from China and Korea, etc., and Japan, most of Southeast Asia has an incredibly lovely weather that then allows for simple living. We have some Jamaican friends here at the monastery, and Bhante Sumano is Jamaican, and we were one day a little bit daydreaming of just let's just go to like really an empty hut in Jamaica because we just don't need anything, like just a little roof when it rains, that is in not complicated roof, like just a piece of of metal can suffice, and that's it. And then we don't have to worry about the plumbing breaking down and the leaks and all of this. But unfortunately in the West, unfortunately in the northern sort of part of Northeast, wherever we are, of the United States, that's not an option. It's either freezing to death or dealing with plumbing, heating, and all of that sophisticated way of living. But fundamentally, it gives you great opportunity to practice the perception of unattractiveness of architecture. And then it says, loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will. We also spoke at length about that yesterday. Oh, it's a very good idea, and it works. It just works. And it can be done by anyone, whether you're a hate type, greed type, or delusion type. There's never, not a reason to practice metta. But especially if you have harsh tendencies of mind, then it is an incredible blessing for yourself and especially others who have to deal with you if you're cultivating loving kindness. Mindfulness of breathing should be developed to cut off thoughts. We spoke about that also last night. And when I was sharing also in a different sutta, the Buddha recommends for stilling the mind, for counteracting restlessness, to pay attention to the element of tranquility. And that has helped me a lot, actually, in the whole month of January. Which is, by the way, interconnected with mindfulness of breathing, because mindfulness of breathing also tranquilizes the body. And paying attention to the element of tranquility then eases us into mindfulness of breathing as well. And then lastly, the Buddha says the perception of impermanence should be developed to eradicate the conceit, I am. When one perceives impermanence, the perception of non-self is stabilized. One who perceives non-self eradicates the conceit, I am, which is nibbana in this very life. And so here at the end, we're getting to the work, the nutshell, the sort of issue of all issues. Basically, what is the problem? What is preventing us from happiness, from attaining unconditional happiness? We get into our way. Because we relate to everything as us. I like this. I want that. I like this person better than the other person. I prefer that building from the other building. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to see that. So fundamentally, we're always in our way. And this is so clear and evident when we're on a retreat where we're hardly interacting with others. And our mind gets full of dukkha, right? Like Maggia. So much full of greed, hatred, and delusion under the mango grove. And who is there to blame? All the sort of usual resorts that we go to, they're not available anymore. So the mind can get a little bit depressed. And then we're like, oh, I don't know what it is. Must be random. No, it's not random. But this is the practice that we ought to do. And we're actually going to speak about non-self in particular tomorrow morning. This evening, I was planning on talking a little bit more instead of strong emotions and how to deal with that. So for more on non-self, tune in tomorrow morning and we'll read another sutta where the Buddha goes through it. So this is all for this morning. If you have any questions and comments, as usual, feel free to type them in the live chat and we can have a bit more of a conversation. All right. So I see that the chat is a little bit live. Hello to Giovanna. To see you. And Michael says, aha, tell me about it. How many times have I wondered why everyone gets it but me? Counterintuitive until we get it, I think. But if we all want to be the worst in the room, what a weird scampering around it will be. That is, we need to both learn and teach, I guess. What does scampering mean?
Scampering?
Yeah.
Kind of scurrying, running around.
Running around. Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, Jens, on my live dictionary here at Empty Ground Monastery. That is, we need to both learn and teach, I guess. We can't all be the lowest on the ladder. Perhaps it's a mindset of humility in a sense. Well, yes, actually, you nailed it. So I remember when I first met Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, actually, he attended this talk of a monk who was significantly more junior than him, and not by 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, but like for 40 years. And he stayed throughout the entire, hour and a half, 2 hours. And afterwards, the monk went up to him and I guess asked him, like, why kind of are you listening to my talk? I mean, it's I'm happy that you're here, but at the same time, you're Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. You translated the entire Pali Canon. You're a weird scholar. Like, it's somewhat, yeah. Why are you don't really need to be here. And he replied, well, you never know. I can learn something new. And that's why he's Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. That's why he has learned so much. So always cultivating that humbleness of mind that we can learn from each single person. So as monastics, I learned so many things from lay people. Doesn't necessarily even have to be, just Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, like a renowned scholar. There's sometimes actually even the worst teachers are the best teachers. Actually, throughout Buddhist insights, some of the biggest insights I had were through the worst teachers that we had. It was quite interesting. And that was because at a certain point, I had to look at my mind and go, well, I'm here, so I might as well just listen and see if there's something that I can learn. And perhaps most of it was garbage, but then every now and then there was a great insight that was shared, because each person, doesn't matter where they are at their sort of level of awakening. It's not that it's just, kind of linear thing. We develop different things all at the same time. So perhaps one can be extremely unskilled in, say, meditation practice, but have some really good understanding of cardinal elements of the Dhamma, and vice versa. Some people being completely clueless and not understanding core tenets of the Dhamma, but then being incredible meditation teachers. They just have a kind of knack for it. And so if we fixate on their drawbacks, then we are precluding ourselves from learning anything, from making progress. But if we're open to it and understanding that that's just what it is, it's the human experience, then we can always learn. And so whenever I allowed myself to do that as a hate type, it can be very difficult, because we can just focus on, I don't like this, I hate this, it has to stop. But once I would get over that and I would listen to a few of the things that were shared, and then I would go like, it's actually very good food for thought. Or also, as Ayya Soma, this senior bhikkhuni who lived with us for a while here at the beginning of 2020, she actually shared with me this beautiful thought that was, there is no such thing as a bad teacher. And whenever you are with a monastic, for example, don't criticize, don't judge. Learn what you want to become and learn what you don't want to become. So even when someone is displaying bad sort of behavior or perhaps not being particularly wise, that's a great learning opportunity because you can see what that looks like, what that feels like, and go, well, actually, I don't want to develop that. That is not worth. That is not useful in awakening. So yeah, there's that. But then also making the active effort to surround yourself with people who are, more ahead of you in the path. I think that's also what propelled me, to be quite frank, to start Buddhist Insights. When I was interested in Buddhism, I wanted to learn Buddhism from the best of the best. And who are the best? The monastics. So I was like, wow, it's very difficult and very complicated for me to go throughout the whole world to every single monastery and then wait for a Dhamma talk. Because when you go to a monastery, it's actually, it's not that you'll have usually Dhamma talks every day. And I was so thirsty of Dhamma. So yeah, that gave me a lot of energy to create the conditions, to offer them for myself and others. I thought, well, clearly this is, leading towards some cessation of suffering. And just like it's working for me, it must work for others. There must be other people interested. And that's how, Buddhist Insights kind of started, so to speak. So there has to be the effort. There has to be the momentum where we are seeking and we are searching and we are making it happen. Unless you have extremely good karma and you just sit on your lap and everything goes to you. There are some people who whom that happens. That was never my experience. I always had to work like a crazy person in order to do anything. And Gita says, thank you for sharing this sutta. You're very welcome. We actually should thank the Buddha for sharing these teachings with us. Says, Ayya, you're absolutely correct. We're so very fortunate that Dhamma is available all around us. Amazing. Yes, I agree. And she also says Florida has sinkholes. I don't know what sinkholes are.
The ground opens up and like it'll be a big hole. Like the ground will just open up and kind of swallow everything.
Wow.
It's like hollow underneath. But sinkholes are in a lot of places.
So Jens, not only is my live dictionary, but it's my live Wikipedia. Sinkholes in Florida. Well, it's crazy. So yeah, you can't escape dukkha.
Exactly.
Even in lovely tropical weather. Apparently, then the ground opens up and it swallows you in. All right. Well, I learned a new thing this morning. So, Junie says, not everywhere. Critters like squirrels and cats scamper. Scampering sometimes implies aimlessness and is often applied to animals. In this case, its use was inspired by my energetic cat. Yeah, we shouldn't be a cat. We should be like more goal-oriented, not going, oh, I'll try this and I'll try that. Oh, wait, is it working? I'm not sure. No, that just creates more delusion. We have the path. We are so lucky that we still have this teaching mostly intact. There is some adhamma here and there, but for the most part, we still have the Dhamma. The reason whenever we actually practice it, it does what it says it's going to do, it really works. So that's how we know. We can truly see for ourselves. So yeah, let's do it and apply effort into doing it. And then Michael says, in that case, I often get to look inside myself, my reaction to what troubles me about that teacher, what comes up in me. Yeah, that's also a very good practice. I've also done that too. especially at the very beginning where I used to be a lot more emotional, let's say. Well, in Italy, we're a little bit more lively than our fellow Northern Europeans. So when I came to practice, I had some extreme um, emotional experiences happening on a regular basis. I actually did not understand how it was possible not to have that. So I would react very strongly, both with like and dislike. A lot of times, as I was describing yesterday, actually, when I was going to Bhante Suttazo's talks, initially, there was a lot of Dhamma Sukha. I really loved the teachings of the Dhamma, but then there was some parts of the Dhamma that I was really having strong reactions to because they were opposing, they were in opposition to my preconceived ideas and thoughts and beliefs, and some of them which were, which I had kind of um, made into my sort of religion. My religion, since I was agnostic and atheist, was not really an official religion, but rather it was the art world or creativity or all of that. My Dhamma used to be literature from all the old classic writers. That's where I would go and look for answers that would describe my human experience. So anything that somewhat touched that and made it like unsettled would trigger me so much. So we have to see why was that, why would statements made on that particular field upset me so much? And that was because that was my sense of self-identity. That's what I had, created my entire life, what I had worked so hard to sort of build and establish for myself. So yeah, it's very important to do that work. What is it actually hitting? Why am I so upset? Perhaps the problem is not what is being said, but what it's sort of poking at. So yeah, all of this, the Dhamma presents us, or the Buddha presents us with a lot of tools that are very useful, but we need to pick them up and use them. And have the willingness to question ourselves. Because if we don't have that willingness, then it will be very difficult to make progress in the path. All right, so that was the last comment this morning, and we're 8:59. I'm becoming so Anglo-Saxon, always like right on time. We finish. And yeah, so we'll be meeting again this evening and talking about anger. And then tomorrow morning again and exploring non-self. So you have a preview. And then Friday evening, maybe we'll leave it a little bit more open. So we'll have a bit of a monk chat focused on our mind and emotional experience. So bring all your personal questions for Friday, and then your Dhamma questions and learning, on the subject matter during tonight's session and tomorrow morning session. Sounds good? All right, so we can end the morning. Oh, Diana says, thank you so much, but I know what time is the evening session. It's at 7:30 p.m. New York City time. So you'll have to, I don't know if you're in New York City or in this area of the world. If not, you can search what that time is. So we're meeting always at 7:30 p.m. New York City time and 8 a.m. New York City time. All right, so we can end the morning with 3 sadhus. Sadhu, sadhu,
Sadhu.
Sadhu. May you all be well and happy, and may you swiftly attain awakening.